The chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls from the ceiling of the Peninsula Hotel's grand ballroom. Each crystal caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions, making the whole room shimmer like something out of a dream. It was the kind of place where even the air felt expensive, where every surface gleamed and where people spoke in hushed tones as if the walls themselves commanded respect. Tonight was special. The annual Children's Foundation Gala had brought out New York's wealthiest and most powerful people. Women glided across the marble floors in gowns that cost more than most people's cars. Men adjusted their bow ties and laughed at jokes that weren't really funny, but everyone laughed anyway because that's what you did at these events. In the corner, a string quartet played soft music that nobody really listened to but everyone appreciated was there. Maya Chen moved through this glittering world like a ghost. At 24 years old, she wore the standard server uniform, crisp white shirt and black vest, her dark hair pulled back tight in a bun. She carried a tray of champagne flutes, weaving between tables with practiced ease, making herself as invisible as possible. That was the job. Be there, but don't be noticed. Fill glasses, clear plates, smile politely if anyone happened to glance your way, which they rarely did. She'd been working for the catering company for almost 2 years now. Before that, there had been other jobs, all of them designed to be invisible, all of them necessary. Maya worked 3 jobs actually, though tonight she was only thinking about getting through this one without dropping anything, or accidentally bumping into one of the guests who collectively wore more money on their bodies than Maya would see in 10 years. What none of these people knew, what they couldn't possibly guess by looking at her, was that Maya had once belonged in rooms like this. Not as a server, but as a performer. She'd been a student at Juilliard, one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. She'd spent 4 years studying voice, learning opera, training her instrument until she could make grown men cry with a single note. She'd been good too. Really good. Her professors had said she had something special, that rare combination of technical skill and emotional depth that couldn't be taught, but life has a way of changing plans. 2 years ago, during her final year at Juilliard, Maya's mother started forgetting things. Small things at first, where she'd put her keys, what day it was, then bigger things, how to get home from the grocery store she'd shopped at for 20 years, Maya's name. The diagnosis came quickly after that. Early onset Alzheimer's. Her mother was only 56. Maya had made the choice in a single afternoon, sitting in a hospital waiting room while her mother underwent tests. She'd left Juilliard 3 months before graduation. The scholarship she'd earned covered tuition but nothing else, and her mother needed care. Real care. The kind that cost money Maya didn't have. So she'd done what she had to do. She'd found work, multiple jobs, whatever paid the bills and covered the care facility in Queens where her mother now lived. Sometimes, late at night when she finally got home to her tiny studio apartment, Maya would stand by the window and let herself remember what it felt like to sing. Really sing, not humming to herself on the subway or in the shower, but singing, with her whole body, feeling the music pour out of her like light. Those memories hurt more than helped, so mostly she tried not to think about them. Tonight the ballroom was packed. Maya counted at least 400 people, maybe more. Tickets to this gala cost $5,000 per person. She knew this, because she'd overheard some of the guests joking about it, about how they'd written the check without even blinking, how it was for a good cause and tax-deductible anyway. $5,000. Maya did the math automatically. That was 2 months of her mother's care facility fees, for one dinner. She tried not to be bitter about it. These people weren't bad. They were here to support a children's charity, to fund music education programs for kids who couldn't afford instruments or lessons. That was good. That mattered. But standing there in her server's uniform, pouring wine for people who'd never worry about medical bills or whether they could afford groceries and rent in the same month, Maya couldn't help feeling the weight of the distance between her life and theirs. At table 7, a man sat looking distinctly bored. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by most of it. He checked his watch twice in 5 minutes. When Maya approached to refill his water glass, she noticed the program next to his plate. Vincent Castellano. She knew that name. Anyone who'd studied opera knew that name. He was a legendary director, the kind of person who could make or break careers, who mounted productions that critics talked about for years. What was he doing here? Maya wondered as she moved away. Then again, events like this attracted all sorts of people. Maybe he knew someone on the foundation board. Maybe he'd been dragged here by a friend. He certainly didn't look happy about it. The evening progressed with the kind of careful choreography that expensive events required. Appetizers appeared and disappeared. The first course arrived, some kind of fancy soup that probably had a French name Maya couldn't pronounce. The foundation's chairwoman, a woman named Catherine Ashworth, stood at the podium and thanked everyone for coming, for their generosity, for their commitment to children and the arts. Maya had heard speeches like this before at other galas. They all said roughly the same things in roughly the same way. She tuned it out, focused on her job, on keeping the glasses filled and the plates cleared. In the kitchen, the other servers joked and complained about sore feet and demanding guests. Miguel, who'd been doing this for 10 years, did impressions of some of the stuffier patrons that had everyone laughing. Rosa shared leftover appetizers with anyone who wanted them. These were Maya's people now, the ones who understood what it meant to work hard for not enough money, who lived in the real world outside these glittering ballrooms. But even as she laughed at Miguel's jokes and gratefully accepted a stuffed mushroom from Rosa, part of Maya's attention was always on the ballroom, on the small stage at the front where, later in the evening, there would be a performance. The program said a soprano from the New York City Opera would sing several pieces. Maya both wanted to watch and wanted to be anywhere else when it happened. Watching other people sing, living the dream she'd given up, was like pressing on a bruise. It hurt, but sometimes you couldn't help yourself. The dinner plates were cleared. Dessert was served. Some elaborate chocolate thing with gold leaf on top because of course it had gold leaf. Coffee and tea were poured. The evening was building toward its centerpiece, the performance that was meant to inspire everyone to open their checkbooks even wider, to pledge donations that would fund another year of music programs for kids who needed them. Maya was refilling coffee cups near the kitchen entrance when she noticed something was wrong. There was urgent whispering near the stage. The hotel's event coordinator was on his phone, his face tight with stress. A woman in a headset was shaking her head. And the soprano, the professional hired to sing tonight, stood off to the side looking worried. Something had gone wrong. Maya didn't know what yet, but she recognized the particular kind of controlled panic that happened when carefully laid plans fell apart. She watched, curious despite herself, as the event coordinator disappeared backstage, and Catherine Ashworth was pulled into a hurried conversation with the hotel manager. This was going to be interesting. In Maya's experience, when things went wrong at events like this, they went really wrong. The wealthy didn't like their evenings disrupted. They expected everything to run smoothly, and when it didn't, people got upset quickly. Maya topped off a few more coffee cups and tried to stay close enough to hear what was happening without being obvious about it. Whatever was wrong, it was big. She could tell by the way Catherine's hands fluttered nervously, by the way the hotel manager kept apologizing, by the worried looks being exchanged among the event staff. In the ballroom, the guests remained unaware. They ate their gold leaf chocolate and sipped their coffee and chatted about summer houses and charity boards and whose daughter had gotten into which prestigious school. The string quartet played on. The chandeliers sparkled. Everything looked perfect. But Maya knew better. She'd worked enough of these events to recognize the signs. Something was about to happen. Something that would turn this perfect, carefully planned evening on its head. She just didn't know what yet. And she certainly couldn't have guessed that before the night was over, she'd be standing on that stage herself, her server's uniform still on, her voice filling the ballroom for the first time in 2 years. Catherine Ashworth stepped up to the microphone with the kind of practiced smile that came from years of hosting charity events. She was elegant in her navy gown, diamonds at her throat, every inch the successful philanthropist. She'd done this 100 times before. Welcome the guests. Introduce the evening's entertainment, watch as beautiful music inspired generous donations. It was a formula that had worked for 19 years running. But tonight, that formula was about to fall apart spectacularly. Ladies and gentlemen, Catherine began, her voice warm and confident. Thank you so much for your patience as we enjoyed this wonderful meal together. Now I'm thrilled to introduce this evening's featured performance. We have with us tonight the incredibly talented soprano Jennifer Walsh, who will be performing several beloved arias for your enjoyment. The lights dimmed slightly. A spotlight illuminated the small stage. The professional soprano stepped forward looking beautiful in a burgundy gown, her face composed and professional. She reached for the microphone, and that's when everything went wrong. The feedback started as a low hum, barely noticeable. Then it built, a whine that made people wince and cover their ears. The soprano stepped back from the microphone, confusion crossing her face. The whine became a shriek, high and piercing, painful in its intensity. Several guests actually stood up, moving away from the speakers positioned around the room. Then came the pop, loud, sharp, unmistakable. Sparks flew from the speaker system near the stage. Someone screamed. The smell of burning electronics filled the air, acrid and alarming. The lights flickered. The hotel staff rushed forward, and someone had the sense to flip a breaker, plunging the sound system into silence. But the damage was done. In the sudden quiet, with only the distant hum of the chandeliers above, 400 wealthy donors sat in shocked confusion. The carefully planned evening had just gone up in literal smoke. Maya watched from her position near the kitchen, her coffee pot forgotten in her hand. She'd seen plenty of things go wrong at events, but never quite this dramatically. The hotel's event coordinator, a man named Richard who usually maintained an unflappable demeanor, looked like he might actually panic. He disappeared backstage at a run. Catherine stood frozen at the podium, her practice smile cracking. She tried to recover, her voice slightly shaky without the microphone's amplification. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we're experiencing some technical difficulties. If you'll just bear with us for one moment. But moments stretched. Richard returned from backstage, his face grim, and pulled Catherine aside. Maya couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read the body language. Catherine's shoulders dropped. Her hand went to her mouth. Richard shook his head firmly, repeatedly, the universal gesture for no, there's nothing we can do. The hotel manager joined them, and now Maya could hear fragments of the urgent whispers. Complete short circuit. Fire hazard. Can't turn it back on. Union electrician won't be here for hours. At the tables, guests were starting to murmur. Some checked their phones. Others looked at their watches. The energy in the room, which had been building toward something special, was deflating like a balloon with a slow leak. People had paid good money to be here, and more importantly, they'd donated their time, which for many of them was more valuable than money. An evening that ended in awkward technical failure wouldn't inspire the kind of generous donations Catherine needed. Maya knew what was at stake. She'd read about the Foundation's new initiative to bring music education to 20 underserved schools across the city. They needed to raise $1 million tonight to make it happen. Without the performance, without the emotional high point that inspired people to open their checkbooks wider, those kids might not get their music programs, might not get instruments or teachers or the chance to discover what music could mean in their lives. She thought about herself at 12, the first time she'd heard opera. Her mother had taken her to a free concert in Central Park. Maya had been bored at first, fidgety, wanting to leave. Then the soprano had started singing, and Maya's entire world had shifted. She'd felt the music in her chest and her bones like it was rearranging something fundamental inside her. She'd turned to her mother with tears streaming down her face and said, "I want to do that. I want to make people feel like this." That moment had changed her life. Had given her dreams and direction and purpose. These kids deserve that chance too. They deserve their moment in a park or a classroom where music reached inside them and showed them something beautiful. Catherine returned to the podium, trying to project calm. "We sincerely apologize for the technical difficulties. Unfortunately, it appears the sound system has malfunctioned and won't be able to be repaired this evening. We're working on alternative arrangements, but there were no alternative arrangements. Where would they find a sound system at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night? And even if they could, it would take hours to set up and test." The evening was effectively over. People were already standing, gathering their things, offering sympathetic smiles to Catherine as they made their way toward the exits. Maya's heart was pounding. She knew she could help. She'd trained for years to project her voice to the back of theaters without any amplification, That was the whole point of classical voice training, to develop the technique and power to fill large spaces with sound. The ballroom wasn't that big, not compared to opera houses. She could do it, but the idea of offering seemed insane. She was a server. She was invisible. She was nobody to these people. Walking up there and suggesting she could save their evening would be presumptuous at best, delusional at worst. They'd probably laugh at her. They'd definitely say no, except those kids needed their music programs, and Catherine looked absolutely devastated. 20 years of successful galas potentially ending in failure on her watch, and Maya knew with absolute certainty that she could do this, that her voice was strong enough, trained enough, ready enough, even after 2 years of silence. Her feet were moving before she'd fully decided. She handed her coffee pot to another server, ignoring Miguel's surprised look. Her hands were shaking. Her heart felt like it might beat out of her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to go back to the kitchen, to stay invisible and safe. But she kept walking. Across the ballroom floor, past tables of confused guests, toward where Catherine stood speaking with Richard and the hotel manager in increasingly desperate tones. "Excuse me." Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. None of them even looked up. She cleared her throat, tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me, Miss Ashworth?" Catherine turned, irritation and stress clear on her face. She looked at Maya without really seeing her. Just another member of the staff. "Yes, what is it?" Maya's mouth was dry. She could feel the hotel manager looking at her impatiently. Richard was already turning away, back to his phone, trying to solve an unsolvable problem. This was her moment. She either spoke now or lost her chance forever. "I couldn't help overhearing about the sound system," Maya said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I might be able to help," Catherine blinked. "Help? I don't think there's anything you can do unless you happen to have a sound system in your pocket." Her tone wasn't unkind, just distracted, already dismissing Maya as she turned back to Richard. "I can sing," Maya said quickly, before she lost her nerve. "Without a microphone. I was trained at Juilliard. I can project to fill this room." Now Catherine was really looking at her. So was the hotel manager. So was Richard. They stared at her like she'd just claimed she could fly. "You're a music student?" Catherine asked slowly. "I was. I studied voice opera. I left before graduating, but I trained for 4 years. Classical technique. I know how to project without amplification." The hotel manager actually laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh exactly, but it was dismissive. The laugh of someone who'd just heard something absurd. "This is the Children's Foundation Gala. We have donors who gave thousands of dollars to be here. You want to tell me a waitress is going to save the evening?" Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her voice level. "I understand how it sounds, but I know I can do this. You have nothing to lose by letting me try." Catherine studied her, really studied her now. Maya could see her mind working, weighing options, calculating risks. The evening was already a disaster. They'd already lost most of their audience. What did they have to lose? "What would you sing?" Catherine asked quietly. Maya thought fast. It had to be something everyone knew. Something that would grab attention immediately. Something that would make them stop heading for the doors and sit back down. Something beautiful enough to justify the evening. To make people forget about the technical failure and remember why they'd come. "Puccini," she said. "O mio babbino caro." It's short, it's beautiful, and everyone recognizes it. Catherine looked at Richard, at the hotel manager, at the stage where the professional soprano stood looking uncomfortable and confused. She looked at the guests filing toward the exits, at the evening she'd spent months planning falling apart before her eyes. She looked back at Maya in her server's uniform, this unknown girl making an impossible claim. "All right," Catherine said finally. "You have one shot at this. Don't make me regret it." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. Catherine walked back to the podium, and Maya watched her take a deep breath, squaring her shoulders, preparing to make an announcement that would either save the evening or make it infinitely worse. "Ladies and gentlemen," Catherine called out, her voice cutting through the murmur of departing guests, "if I could have your attention for just one more moment. Please, if you'd return to your seats, we have a special performance for you this evening after all." People paused, uncertain. Some sat back down, curious. Others remained standing, checking their watches, clearly skeptical. Catherine continued, her voice steady now, committed to the choice. One of our staff members this evening happens to be a trained vocalist. She's graciously offered to perform for us without amplification, in the classical style. Please welcome Maya Chen. The murmur that went through the crowd wasn't entirely positive. Maya heard it as she walked toward the stage, her server's uniform suddenly feeling like a costume, like she was playing dress-up in a world she didn't belong to. She saw raised eyebrows, heard whispered comments, felt the weight of 400 pairs of eyes judging her before she'd even opened her mouth. At table 7, Vincent Castellano sat up straighter, his boredom replaced by something else. Curiosity, maybe, or the instinct of someone who'd spent 50 years in opera, who could sense when something interesting was about to happen. Maya stepped onto the small stage. The spotlight was bright in her eyes. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She could see people's faces, the skepticism, the pity, the awkward discomfort of witnessing something that was probably going to be embarrassing. This was it. This was her moment. 2 years of silence, 2 years of invisible work, 2 years of buried dreams. And now here, in her server's uniform, she was going to sing again. She was either going to be brilliant, or she was going to fail in front of 400 people and probably lose her job in the process. Maya closed her eyes, took a breath, and prepared to find out which one it would be. Maya stood alone on the stage, the spotlight making her squint. She could hear everything in the painful silence. The clink of someone's wine glass, a woman's uncomfortable laugh, the scrape of chairs as people shifted, waiting for this awkward moment to be over so they could leave with a story about the ridiculous gala where a waitress tried to sing opera. Her hands were clasped in front of her, trembling. The server's vest felt tight across her chest, restricting her breathing when she needed it most. She'd performed dozens of times at Juilliard in recitals and showcases, but always for audiences who wanted to be there, who came expecting music. These people hadn't come to hear her. Most of them were actively hoping this would be quick so they could go home. She thought about her mother. Not the woman in the care facility who sometimes didn't recognize her own daughter, but the mother from before, the one who'd worked double shifts at the diner to pay for Maya's voice lessons when she was a teenager. The one who'd sat in the front row at every school concert, even when she was exhausted, even when she was sick. The one who'd cried with joy when Maya got accepted to Juilliard on a full scholarship. Make them feel something, baby girl. Her mother used to say, that's the whole point of music. Make them feel. Maya took a breath, then another. She felt her training kick in, muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice. Drop the shoulders, open the chest, plant the feet. Find the breath support from the diaphragm. All the technical details her professors had drilled into her became automatic, her body remembering what her mind was too nervous to focus on. She thought about the aria she'd chosen. O mio babino caro. Oh my dear papa. It was from Puccini's opera Gianni Schicchi, sung by a young woman begging her father to let her marry the man she loves. The lyrics were simple, the melody achingly beautiful. It was an aria about love and desperation, about pleading for something you needed more than breathing. Maya understood desperation. She'd been living it for 2 years. She opened her mouth and the first note came out pure and clear, cutting through the ballroom like a beam of light through darkness. The effect was immediate. Several conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. The woman who'd been laughing went quiet. The note hung in the air, impossibly beautiful. And when Maya moved to the second note, she felt something shift in the room. People were listening now. Really listening. She'd forgotten what this felt like. The power of it. Not the power of dominating or controlling, but the power of connection, of reaching into someone else's chest and touching their heart with nothing but sound. Her voice filled the ballroom effortlessly. Every corner, every shadow, riding on proper technique and breath control that no microphone could ever replicate. The Italian lyrics flowed from her lips. O mio babino caro, mi piace, è bello, bello. Oh my dear papa, I love him, he is beautiful, beautiful. The melody climbed and soared, and Maya let herself disappear into it. She wasn't a server anymore. She wasn't invisible. She was just voice and music and emotion, the way she'd been trained to be, the way she'd dreamed of being since she was 12 years old. At table 7, Vincent Castellano leaned forward, his experienced ear catching things others might miss. The technical skill was obvious, the years of training evident in every phrase. But there was something else, something you couldn't teach. She was singing about love and desperation, but he could hear more in her voice. Loss, sacrifice, real pain, lived and survived. This wasn't a student showing off technique. This was an artist bearing her soul. In the third row, a woman in a diamond necklace worth more than Maya's annual salary felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't understand Italian, didn't know what the words meant, but she felt them anyway. The yearning in that voice, the pure emotion of it. Maya was barely aware of the audience anymore. Her eyes were closed, her whole body engaged in the act of singing. This was what she'd missed, not the applause or the recognition, but this feeling of being completely present in a moment, of channeling something beautiful through herself and into the world. For 2 years she'd kept her voice locked away, using it only for practical things, calling out orders at her restaurant job, answering phones at the office where she worked mornings, humming her mother to sleep when she had bad nights at the facility. But this was different. This was why she'd spent 4 years studying, why she'd practiced until her throat hurt, why she'd chosen this impossible career path in the first place. Because sometimes, rarely, there were moments like this where music became something more than entertainment, where it became truth. The aria built toward its climax. The melody climbed higher, the emotion intensified. The young woman in the opera was reaching the height of her plea to her father. Let me marry him or I'll throw myself in the river. Let me have this one thing I love or I'll die. Maya knew about needing one thing, about having to choose between love and survival, between dreams and duty. Her voice caught on the high notes with a raw honesty that no amount of technical perfection could fake. She wasn't performing anymore. She was simply being honest in the only language that had ever made complete sense to her. The ballroom had gone completely still. The servers had stopped moving. The kitchen staff had quietly emerged to listen from the doorway. Even the string quartet professional musicians themselves stood transfixed. 400 people who'd come for dinner and small talk and tax deductions sat frozen, caught in the spell of a voice they hadn't expected, singing a truth they could feel even if they couldn't name it. The aria descended toward its conclusion. The melody softened, became a plea rather than a demand. The young woman in the opera was bargaining now, promising to pray, to be good, to do anything if her father would just let her have this one thing. Maya's voice dropped to almost a whisper, intimate and vulnerable, somehow still filling the entire space with sound. And then the final phrase, the last plea, "O Dio vorrei morir." Oh God, I'd rather die. The note climbed one last time, higher than before, held with perfect control that seemed to last forever. Maya poured everything into it. 2 years of grief, of exhaustion, of watching her mother slowly disappear. 2 years of putting dreams aside, of being invisible, of surviving rather than living. All of it went into that final soaring note. The chandelier crystals seemed to resonate with the frequency. The very air felt charged. Time stretched out, suspended in that perfect moment where nothing existed except the voice and the silence waiting to rush back in. And then it ended. Maya's voice faded to nothing. The silence that followed was absolute, complete. No one moved. No one breathed. The moment hung there, crystallized, perfect. Then someone started clapping. Just one person at first. Their hands coming together in sharp, clear strikes that echoed through the ballroom. Then another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, the applause was thunderous, overwhelming, a physical force that seemed to shake the room. People leaped to their feet. All of them. 400 people standing, clapping, some of them crying openly. The sound washed over Maya like a wave, and she opened her eyes, stunned. She'd expected polite applause at best, maybe a few kind words from Catherine. She hadn't expected this. The ovation went on and on. People weren't just clapping, they were shouting. "Brava, brava!" A man in the front row had tears streaming down his face, not bothering to wipe them away. A woman clutched her husband's arm, her hand over her heart. Vincent Castellano was on his feet too, clapping slowly, deliberately, his face thoughtful and intense. Maya stood there in her server's uniform, tears running down her own face now, unable to process what was happening. She'd been invisible an hour ago. Now everyone was seeing her, really seeing her, and it was overwhelming and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Catherine rushed onto the stage and pulled Maya into a tight embrace. "Oh my God," she kept saying. "Oh my God, that was incredible. That was perfect." But the audience wouldn't stop. The applause continued, wave after wave of it. 5 minutes passed, then 6. People showed no signs of sitting down. Some guests near the stage reached out as if they wanted to touch her, to make sure she was real. The servers she'd worked with were clapping louder than anyone, Miguel whooping and cheering like he was at a concert. When the applause finally began to die down, and people slowly retook their seats, Maya could see their faces had changed. The skepticism was gone. The impatience, the judgment, the dismissiveness. Now they looked at her with something else. Respect, wonder, recognition of something rare witnessed. Catherine took the podium again, her voice shaking slightly with emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that was extraordinary. Completely unexpected and absolutely extraordinary. More applause. Catherine waited for it to settle. What you just witnessed is exactly why we do this work. Why we fight to bring music education to children who might never otherwise experience it. Because somewhere out there is another Maya. Another young person with this kind of gift who just needs a chance. Who needs an instrument, a teacher, an opportunity. The energy in the room had completely transformed. People weren't thinking about leaving anymore. They were energized, inspired, exactly the emotional state Catherine had hoped to create before the technical disaster. She seized the moment. We set a goal tonight of raising $1 million for our new music education initiative. After what we've just experienced, after Maya so generously shared her gift with us, I hope you'll consider giving even more generously than you'd planned. Maya stepped off the stage, her legs shaky, her whole body buzzing with adrenaline. People reached out as she passed, touching her arm, her hand offering congratulations. An older woman grabbed her hand and held it tight. Thank you, she said simply. Just thank you. But there was one person waiting who made Maya's heart stop. Vincent Castellano stood at the end of what had become an impromptu receiving line. His face was serious, thoughtful, his eyes studying her with an intensity that made her nervous. When she finally reached him, he held out his hand. Vincent Castellano, he said. I know, Maya replied, shaking his hand. I know who you are. I studied your production of La Boheme in school. It was revolutionary, he smiled slightly. You're very kind. Walk with me a moment? They stepped to a quieter corner of the ballroom while around them, the energy continued to buzz. Catherine was at the podium, and Maya could hear pledges being called out. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. The numbers kept climbing. Where did you train? Vincent asked. Juilliard. I was in my final year when I had to leave. Had to leave? Not chose to leave? Maya hesitated, then decided on honesty. My mother has early onset Alzheimer's. She needs care I couldn't afford while being a full-time student. So I left, got jobs. Real jobs that pay. Vincent nodded slowly. And you've been silent for 2 years. Not performing? Not really. Not like that. Maya gestured to the stage. I sing to my mom sometimes at the facility. In the shower. But nothing serious. You can't be serious, Vincent said, and for a moment Maya thought he was making a joke, but his face was grave. You have a gift. Rare. The kind I spend years searching for and rarely find. And you're serving coffee at charity events? I'm surviving, Maya said quietly. I'm taking care of my mother. That's what matters. What if I told you there might be a way to do both? Maya's heart skipped. I don't understand. Vincent pulled a card from his jacket pocket. I'm casting a new production at the Metropolitan Opera. It's a challenging role. Not the lead, but significant. The character is young, desperate, fighting for something she can't live without. What you sang tonight, that's exactly the emotional truth I need. I'd like you to audition. I can't, Maya said automatically. I work 3 jobs. My mother's care costs $4,000 a month. I can't just quit and hope something works out. The Met has partnerships, Vincent said. Good care facilities that work with us to support our artists. Better than what most people can afford on their own. And the role pays. Not enough to make you rich, but enough to live on. Enough to cover a good facility for your mother. Maya stared at him. You're serious? I'm always serious about opera, Vincent replied. You have something special. Real. The kind of artist who makes audiences feel something they'll remember for the rest of their lives. I heard that tonight. Everyone in this room heard it. The question is, do you want to keep serving coffee or do you want to sing? He pressed the card into her hand. My office. Wednesday at 2. Just audition. See what's possible. If it doesn't work out, you haven't lost anything. But if it does, He trailed off, letting the possibility hang in the air. Maya looked down at the card in her hand. Vincent Castellano, Metropolitan Opera, a phone number, an address, a chance. Around them, Catherine's voice rang out with joy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to announce that thanks to your incredible generosity tonight, we've exceeded our goal. We've raised $1,300,000 for music education. The ballroom erupted in applause again. Maya stood holding Vincent's card, the sound washing over her, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd thought were dead and buried. Maybe, just maybe, if she was brave enough to try one more time. Maya didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, Vincent's card on the nightstand beside her. The city sounds filtered through the thin walls. Sirens in the distance. Someone's television too loud. The familiar soundtrack of her life in Queens, so different from the glittering ballroom she'd left hours earlier. Her phone had been buzzing since she got home. Messages from the other servers who'd witnessed what happened. Miguel had texted a string of fire emojis followed by, "You are a star." Rosa sent a voice message in Spanish, half crying, saying she'd always known Maya was special. Even her manager at the restaurant had somehow heard about it and texted asking if she was quitting, because he needed to know if he should hire someone new. But Maya kept coming back to the same question. What if she tried and failed? What if the audition went badly? What if Vincent's offer disappeared like smoke? Worse, what if she succeeded? What if she got the role and then couldn't handle it? Couldn't balance everything, couldn't be good enough? What if she let down her mother or Vincent or worst of all, herself? She'd spent 2 years building a life that was stable if not happy. 3 jobs that paid the bills. A routine that worked. Her mother was in a decent facility, clean and safe if not luxurious. Maya visited 3 times a week, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday without fail. She knew the nurses, knew which ones actually cared and which ones were just collecting a paycheck. She knew when her mother had good days, when she might recognize Maya's voice if not her face. Walking away from that stability, even for a chance at something better, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. One step forward and she'd be flying or falling. There was no way to know which until she'd already jumped. Tuesday morning came. Maya dragged herself through her early shift at the office, answering phones, filing papers, making coffee for people who never looked at her. Her mind was elsewhere. Wednesday at 2. The Metropolitan Opera. An audition that could change everything or confirm that Saturday night had been a fluke. A moment of magic that couldn't be repeated. That evening, she visited her mother at the care facility. The building was clean enough, the staff professional enough, but it had that institutional smell no amount of air freshener could quite mask. Antiseptic and something else. Age, maybe. The slow decay of time. Her mother was in the common room, staring at a television she probably wasn't really seeing. At 58, she looked older. The disease had aged her, stolen something vital from her eyes. Maya sat beside her, took her hand. "Hi, Mom, it's me." "It's Maya." Her mother looked at her, and for a moment there was nothing. Then a flicker. "You have a nice voice," she said, which was better than nothing. At least she was speaking today. "Thanks, Mom. I sang on Saturday night, at a fancy event. I sang opera like you taught me to love. Remember when you took me to that concert in the park? When I was 12? Her mother smiled vaguely. I like music. Maya felt the familiar ache in her chest. Her mother had sacrificed so much for her dreams, and now she couldn't even remember them. Couldn't remember watching Maya perform in school concerts. Couldn't remember crying at her Juilliard acceptance letter. Couldn't remember saying, "Make them feel something, baby girl," before every performance. "I have a chance to sing again," Maya said quietly, talking more to herself than to her mother. "Really sing? At the Met, the Metropolitan Opera, Mom. Can you believe that?" "But I'm scared. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if I let you down?" Her mother turned to look at her, and for just a second her eyes were clear. Really clear. The fog lifted, and Maya's actual mother looked out at her. "Don't be scared," she said, her voice suddenly firm and familiar. "You were always brave, my brave girl." Then the fog returned. Her mother turned back to the television, the moment gone as quickly as it came. But Maya sat there, tears running down her face, holding her mother's hand and feeling something shift inside her. A decision crystallizing. Wednesday afternoon, Maya stood outside the Metropolitan Opera House, staring up at the building like it might bite her. The architecture was grand and intimidating, All those tall arches and windows. She was wearing her best dress, which wasn't saying much. A simple navy blue thing she usually saved for job interviews. Her hands were shaking again. She'd almost turned back 3 times on the subway ride here. Almost convinced herself this was crazy, that she should just forget the whole thing and get back to her regular life. But then she'd think about Saturday night, about the feeling of singing again, about Vincent's serious face telling her she had something special, about her mother saying, "My brave girl," in that moment of clarity. Inside, the opera house was even more intimidating. The lobby alone was bigger than her entire apartment. Red carpet, gold fixtures, portraits of famous singers lining the walls. Maya felt small and out of place, like a child who'd wandered into an adult's world by mistake. "Can I help you?" A woman at the desk looked at her professionally. "I have an appointment with Vincent Castellano at 2. The woman checked her computer, then smiled. "Ah, yes, Maya Chen, he's expecting you. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor. Turn right. His office is at the end of the hall." Maya rode the elevator alone, watching the floors tick by, her reflection in the polished brass doors. She looked terrified. She felt terrified. But she was here. That counted for something. Vincent's office was cluttered with papers, musical scores, photographs from past productions. He looked up when she knocked, a slight smile crossing his face. "You came, good. I wasn't entirely sure you would." "I almost didn't," Maya admitted. "Honesty. I like that." He stood, gestured for her to follow. "Come. The audition room is downstairs." They walked through hallways lined with posters and playbills. Maya recognized names of famous singers, legendary productions. This was the Metropolitan Opera, the Met, where the greatest voices in the world came to perform. And she was about to audition here in her cheap department store dress with her voice that hadn't been professionally trained in 2 years. The audition room was smaller than she expected. With a piano and a simple raised platform, a woman sat at the piano, older, with kind eyes. "This is Patricia," Vincent said. "Our rehearsal pianist." "Patricia, this is Maya Chen." "I heard about Saturday night," Patricia said warmly. "Everyone's been talking about it." "The waitress who stopped the gala." Maya winced. "I'm trying not to think about it that way." "Why not?" Vincent asked. "You did stop the gala. You made 400 people stop, listen, and feel something real. That's the goal, isn't it?" He pulled out a folder, handed her sheet music. "I want you to sing this. It's from the production I'm casting. The character is a young woman who's lost everything but hasn't lost hope. She's begging for a chance, for someone to see her as more than her circumstances." Maya looked at the music. It was challenging, lots of high notes, dramatic passages, but it was also beautiful, the kind of music that would let her show range and emotion. "Can I have a minute to look it over?" "Take your time." She studied the score, humming quietly to herself, finding the melody, understanding the character. A young woman who'd lost everything, who was invisible to the world around her, who just needed someone to really see her. Maya understood that character in her bones. "Ready?" Patricia asked. Maya nodded. She stepped onto the platform, took a breath, found her center the way her professors had taught her, and she began to sing. The first phrase came out strong and clear. "Good." She relaxed into it, let the character take over. The young woman in this opera was desperate but dignified, broken but undefeated. Maya knew how that felt. She poured it into her voice, let the music carry all the emotion she'd been holding for 2 years. Vincent watched her with that intense focus, his face unreadable. Patricia played beautifully, supporting her, following her dynamics. The song built toward a climax, a moment where the character demanded to be seen, to be heard, refusing to be invisible anymore. Maya hit the high notes with everything she had, not showing off, not trying to impress, just being honest. This was her. This was her truth. This was the sound of someone fighting to be recognized as fully human, fully valuable, fully deserving of their dreams. The final note faded. Silence filled the room. Vincent sat perfectly still for a long moment, his fingers steepled under his chin, thinking. "Again," he said finally, but this time the second verse, "Pull back more. She's not just demanding now, she's pleading. Let us hear the vulnerability under the strength." Maya nodded. They ran it again, and again. Vincent gave her notes each time, adjusting, refining, pushing her to find different colors in the voice, different emotional truths. It was exhausting and exhilarating. She was working again, really working, using her training, being challenged. After the fourth run-through, Vincent stood up. Good, very good. Patricia, what do you think? She's raw, Patricia said honestly. 2 years away from regular practice shows. But the instrument is solid, and more importantly, she understands the character. You can't teach that, Vincent nodded. Maya, I'm going to be direct with you. You need work. Your technique has gotten sloppy in places. You're out of practice. If I cast you, you'll need to train intensively for 3 months before we start rehearsals. Daily vocal coaching, physical conditioning, the whole program. Maya's heart sank. I can't afford that kind of coaching. I can barely afford rent. The Met provides training for cast members, Vincent said. It's part of the program. You'd work with our vocal coach every morning, then rehearsals in the afternoon once we start production. The role pays $3,000 a month during the 3-month training period, $5,000 during the 3-month performance run. Maya did the math quickly. $8,000 total for 6 months. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. More than enough if she could drop down to just one part-time job. And my mother? I made some calls. Vincent pulled out a folder. There's a facility in Manhattan, actually very close to here. Clearview Gardens. They're part of our support network for artists. The care is excellent, much better than most places, and the cost is $4,500 a month. But they offer a subsidy for program participants. You'd pay $3,000. $3,000? Maya's voice cracked. That's less than I'm paying now for a worse facility. It's a good program, Vincent said. We believe artists should be able to focus on their art without choosing between their craft and their family. The role leaves you with $2,000 a month in your pocket after your mother's care is covered. If you keep one part-time job, you can make it work. It won't be easy, but it's possible. Maya sat down hard in a nearby chair. This was real. This was actually genuinely real. Not a fantasy, not a maybe, but an actual offer with actual numbers and actual solutions to actual problems. Why me? She asked. You could cast anyone. Someone established, someone who doesn't need training, someone without complications. Vincent sat down across from her, leaning forward. You want the truth? Saturday night I was bored. I've seen 1,000 singers, heard every note performed every possible way. Nothing surprises me anymore. Then you walked onto that stage in your server's uniform and you surprised me. You made me feel something. You made everyone in that room feel something. That's rare, Maya, that's precious. Technical skill I can find anywhere. Training I can provide, but what you have, that truth in your voice, that's something you either have or you don't. You have it. Tears were running down Maya's face again. She seemed to cry a lot lately. When would I start? A Monday, if you're in. I need to know today. What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up? Then you mess up, Vincent said simply. But you'll have tried. You'll know. Right now you're living with the question. Wouldn't you rather live with the answer, whatever it is? Maya thought about her mother saying, my brave girl. Thought about Saturday night, about the feeling of singing again. Really singing. Thought about spending the rest of her life wondering what if. I'm in, she heard herself say. I'm in. Vincent smiled, really smiled for the first time since she'd met him. Good. Patricia, can you print out the training schedule? Maya, you'll need to come in tomorrow to sign contracts, meet the vocal coach, get oriented. Bring your mother's current care information so we can coordinate the transfer to Clearview Gardens. Maya nodded, not quite trusting her voice. This was happening. This was really happening. She left the Met in a daze, walked out into the afternoon sunshine feeling like the world had tilted sideways. 3 hours ago, she'd been a server with 3 jobs and fading dreams. Now she was going to perform at the Metropolitan Opera. Now her mother would be in a better facility. Now everything was different. She pulled out her phone, texted her manager at the restaurant. I need to talk to you about my schedule. Major life change. Call me when you can. Then she texted Miguel. Remember when you called me a star? Turns out you might have been right. I'm going to sing at the Met. His response was immediate. String of star emojis, party emojis, champagne emojis. Then I knew it, we all knew it. You were too good to be carrying trays forever. Go shine, girl. Go show them what you've got.